Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good
Let
evening.
me try that again. Good evening.
Good
evening.
It's great to be here today, and before I get going, I would like to just find out a little bit more about you. How many people here are in marketing? Raise your hand. Okay, a couple. And how many people in engineering? Good. You know, it's interesting how the engineers tend to sit apart from the marketers. I used to run an R&D department, and before I became a marketing professor, one of my degrees is in engineering, and I noticed that there tends to be some friction or some mistrust between the engineers and the marketers. And I want to make sure that we're all starting on the same foundation and we have a clean slate. And I would like to just clarify one small point that was made in the introduction about me being a Nobel medal holder. Now, I would just tell you that everything they said was true. About 3 years ago, I was giving a presentation at a tech company, and in the audience was Alan McDermott. Now, Alan was the 2000 Nobel medal holder in chemistry. There have only been 3 Nobel medals in chemistry. Alan was one of them. He came up to me after my talk and he said, "Gary, that was pretty good. I have my Nobel medal with me. Would you like to see it?" I said, "Well, sure." And he actually had it. He took it out of his briefcase, and it was a red mahogany box. And he opens this box, and it was red velvet on the inside. And in this box, he takes out this gold coin. It was a Nobel medal on his red ribbon. And he picks it up, and he said, "Would you like to hold it?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm holding it. He says, "Now you are a Nobel medal holder." Nobel medal holder, different than a Nobel medal winner. I thought it was important to say that so that we could build our relationship based on mutual trust and respect. I'd like to share something else with you, something that you probably haven't ever seen before, other than actually Brigida. This is called a BlackBerry phone. Now, you probably have never seen this before. This is almost an antique. BlackBerry used to have 80% market share in the mobile phone business. In 2007, BlackBerry, or at that time their name was Research in Motion, had a market valuation of $84 billion. Last year, their market valuation was under $5 billion. It's a loss of $80 billion in shareholder value. Why? Because the company failed to innovate. I've been in the field of innovation for over 25 years. I've been conducting research with some of the leading companies, including Apple, IBM, General Electric, and I can tell you with certainty that the old way of innovating is dead. The old way of innovating was like the game we used to play as children, telephone. Used to tell one person who used to tell another, and this is how it works in the game of innovation. The customer, if they found something wrong with your product, and your company was lucky enough that the customer would tell somebody, the customer would tell the salesperson about it. The salesperson would tell marketing, marketing engineering, engineering would give the specs to manufacturing, manufacturing would produce it, give the product over to marketing, they would produce the promotional materials, marketing would then give these promotional materials to sales, who would then sell the product to the customer. It's like innovation by a series of committees. When was the last time one committee produced something good, let alone a series of committees? The Department of Defense created the first formal innovation, systematic innovation process in the 1950s to manage their large defense programs. And then in the late 70s and early 80s, Bob Cooper created the stage gate process that I think you use in your companies and many companies use. The stage gate process has remained virtually unchanged for the last 30 years. And if you take a look at the credible studies done over the last 20 years, you will notice that we have not been getting any better at our ability to innovate, and a careful review of these studies show that we are actually getting worse. More recently, several new theories have emerged that have been showing promise. Clay Christensen has shown us that customers have a hard time articulating needs they do not yet know they have. And Eric Ries created a theory called building a minimum viable product to validate that a company can actually produce something, and when you produce this working prototype and put it in customers' hands, they can better give the company feedback. Now, Eric's theories about creating this minimum viable product were created for very advanced radical technologies where it wasn't clear if you could produce something. It's like the Star Trek transporter. How many people have heard of the Star Trek transporter? All right, great, a lot of you. I never felt so old. A couple of years ago I asked a student as an undergraduate class, who's heard of the Star Trek transporter? Not one person in class raised their hand. All right, so anyway, we all would like a Star Trek transporter in our basement to go from New York to Los Angeles in a minute. It would be great. But before we bought one and used one, we wanted to make sure that the company can dematerialize us in one space, materialize us back in the same form in the other, with our arms in the same places and our heads, facing forward. Producing a minimum viable product answers the question, can you do something? But it left unanswered the question, should you do something? So I was asked by the Malaysian government about 5 years ago to help them in their innovation process. Now, Malaysia is in a very unique situation. They are in the shadow of China, and China has obliterated the bottom end of the innovation spectrum. If you want a low-priced product, China is going to do it. So countries like Malaysia, Taiwan, Indonesia, they have to move up market to survive. So we worked with their government to try to come up with a new way that they could innovate with less risk. And we came up with something called lean innovation. The foundation of lean innovation is creating something called a prototype, which is a low-fidelity prototype. It's a rendering that gives you a rough example what the concept is going to be. We call it an MVC, a minimum viable concept. And we've had surprisingly good results. I just want to show you what a minimum viable concept looks for one of our teams that we did in a workshop in Malaysia. Using poster board and Legos in a matter of 15 minutes. You can produce these what's called a low-fidelity prototype using cardboard, poster board, balsa wood, glue, and markers, and you can then take this out to the customer, and the customer, once they have something that they can see and feel and touch, they can give you a much better idea if they would like it, and more importantly, they can tell you what you can do to change the idea. This is another example of a surgical company that produced this device. This is a low-fidelity prototype, and it ended up being this in the marketplace. This is a tissue sampler for use in the operating room. Now, these are low-fidelity prototypes. You can use some of the new technology-based tools, such as AutoCAD and SolidWorks, to create more high-tech, computer-animated prototypes that I'll show you in a second. What they did was, in a matter of 3 days, they produced this computer animation. It was a company that makes beverages in plastic containers, which they then took out to the customers to see if there was a market. And the market was for this cap that could be sold in the 7-Elevens, and you could put this for kids, like a sippy cap, actually, they call it. And they found that there was a need for it, and they're in the middle of producing it now. So we've used this concept of lean innovation both in this country and abroad, and the results have been startling. For a course that we just offered last semester at Stevens, where we taught lean innovation to 500 freshman engineers, we had 31 student teams accepted on Kickstarter. 31 student teams. Now, you're probably familiar, Kickstarter is the leading crowdfunding site in the world. I've had 2 ideas that I've submitted to Kickstarter. Both were rejected. I tried to get Network into Kickstarter, but it was like this black fortress with a moat around it. You couldn't get to them to find out what was the problem, what didn't they like with my idea. After we had these 31 student teams, oh, by the way, there were 31 student teams in 1 semester in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks. After we had these 31 student teams accepted, the folks at Kickstarter were calling us, asking us, what are you putting in the water over there at Stevens? In the executive workshops that we were giving, using the theory of lean innovation, we had companies come with nothing at the beginning. After 4 days, they went from customer concept to customer order. Customer concept to customer order in only 4 days. I mean, it's really miraculous. I've had a number of different conversations with executives all around the world about innovation. And people are inherently reluctant to pursue innovation initiatives and innovation programs because it's risky. It's risky even to produce a minimum viable product. Look at Motorola. Motorola's Iridium, their satellite system. 66 satellites at a cost of $7 billion in today's dollars to produce one working system. And they found out that it didn't quite work the way it was supposed to. The competing technologies had already surpassed its performance, and it bankrupted Motorola, a phenomenal, wonderful company that lost thousands and thousands of jobs. As rising stars of Pfizer, I can tell you that the buck starts here, right now, right in this room. It used to be that innovation was the job of the R&D department. But with the globalization of competition and the rapid pace of technology, it is unreasonable to assume that R&D is the know-all, be-all department for creating these new products and services and processes for your company. Yesterday, the job of innovation was R&D. Today and tomorrow, the job of innovation is going to be everyone's job. And now, I have tenure. Some people think tenure is a privilege. It's a reward, but it's not. Tenure is a responsibility. It's a responsibility to pursue the type of research that you think is correct, no matter what other people say. Similarly, I think our job as rising stars, as senior leaders, is to do some of the hard things that other people are saying, no, don't do, it's not your job. I have a good friend of mine who is the president of Eli Lilly. He received 10 promotions in 13 years. 10 promotions in 13 years. And I asked him, how did you do it? He said, you know, pretty much it was every day I just showed up and did the best job I could. But every once in a while, I would do something really special. And I think it's important to try to let that really something special thing that you do for your company to be creating a new product line or a new service or a new process. Because we cannot afford to wait anymore. It is critical to innovate. About 10 years ago, I had a meeting with the senior folks at Lucent. Lucent, this was the organization that was AT&T Bell Labs. They created the transistor, the telephone. This was the best R&D organization in the world. I gave them a briefing somewhat similar to the briefing I'm giving you today. It wasn't as well developed, but it had most of the concepts. I remember what they said. This is pretty much a direct quote. They said, "Gary, don't be so naive to think that you can teach us something about innovation when we have 1,000 people working on that very topic." That was when their stock was trading at $84 a share. It then went down to 50 cents a share, and it was bought by Alcatel, and they subsequently laid off 15,000 employees. The time today is to innovate. It is everybody's job, and with the tools of lean innovation, you can do it without betting your company and without betting your reputation on it. It is needed, it is possible, and the time is now. Thank you very much.